So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. We're now on episode 47 of the series, and in the last episode we saw the beginning of the War of the Greats, aka World War III. If you didn't see the last episode, probably should maybe go watch it, because you just got spoiled, but ignore the green dots, that means nothing, right? Oh yeah, World War III started between Russia, the old empire, and China. All three of these nations are at war with each other. Well, not officially. The old empire and China aren't at war just yet, but we'll cover that here in a second. We saw a series of nuclear strikes throughout all of these countries, which is going to certainly cripple them and change the war effort overall. But today we're getting to the actual conventional fighting between the three powers. So if you guys do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. We're trying to get to 200,000 subscribers. As stated in a community post on Monday, this is going to be our longest and most advanced war in channel history. But we're also adding in a new layer that's going to be used. So I hope you guys are excited for that. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into our quick recap. So the old empire and Russia both had their leaders assassinated, which prompted a tense face-off between the two on the border of Ukraine and Russia. One thing led to another, and an air skirmish between Russia and the old empire took place in Chinese territory, which also brought China into that standoff. We then saw a mistake start this war as Russian radar detected multiple old Iberian nukes heading towards their territory, but alas, it actually wasn't nuclear bombs, and their radar system got it wrong, which caused Russia to actually launch nukes in the old empire territory, this time for real. So essentially, Russia nuked the old empire, and the old empire, of course, nuked them back, and that is how our nuclear war started. But at the very end of the episode, we also saw the old empire preemptively nuke multiple sites in China, which will officially bring them into the war, and that's where we begin. So the old empire nukes multiple military bases across China, also targeting some major cities, but mostly going after major military bases that house Chinese nukes. In the orange country, their entire nuclear arsenal is destroyed as they only had one site with nuclear bombs within. The red team had all of their nuclear sites hit as well, leaving them with, of course, 0. In the gold team, 4 sites were struck, but they do still have 2 nukes at their disposal. And now for China itself, 8 nuclear bombs hit on Chinese soil and took out roughly 30 bombs. So this will leave China's arsenal looking something like this, with most of their nukes in foreign territory wiped out completely and over half of their arsenal gone. They now remain with 58 total bombs, which is still a lot more than the old empire in Russia. Actually, it's tied with Russia, but way more than the old empire. Now, at the end of the last episode, I also wanted you guys to draw attention to this number. As you can see, the old empire has 47 total nukes, but 40 of them are in their allied territory, which means the old empire only has 7 nukes left on their own soil, 7 nukes to defend themselves with. The preemptive strike on China did do a lot of damage, leaving them with 46 nukes, but 46 is still a lot more than 7, meaning a possible response from China would be deadly for the old empire. Now, there are 2 points that I want to make before we get to the conventional fighting. The technology level of the world right now, it is currently 1990 compared to our current timeline. However, the technology of this world is around the 1950s-ish. These are essentially just tactical nukes. They're nowhere as strong as the 1950s nukes we saw in real life. Like I said, they're comparable to the little boy bomb dropped in Japan, maybe a little bit weaker than that, but these things are pure tactical, which means it's not as devastating as the real world nukes are. Now, point number 2. Why did the old empire nuke China? Well, similar to how Russia thought the old empire would strike them at any point, the old empire thought that China would strike them at any point after starting the war with Russia. With both of these countries being nuked and weakened, the old empire thought that China would just come in and clean them up, which is why they took the preemptive strikes on all of China's nuclear supplies in hopes of leveling any chance that we would see a big response from China. That is the leader of the old empire's justification for his action, and Russia's leader will actually take some inspiration from this, as well as China's leader. You see, the old empire their nuclear supply is basically gone. They're not going to do too much damage. However, Russia still has over 20 bombs in their arsenal, and China, of course, has around 46. So, let's even it out a little bit, right? China and its ally will launch first, as these guys launch 2 nuclear bombs into the brown team's territory, taking out 2 nuclear sites. We then see China and Russia launch their supplies at around the same time. Multiple big explosions are seen throughout Russia and China at the same time, relatively close to each other's borders. At the end of things, both of these countries launch 8 nukes at each other, with the gold team launching 2 nukes at the brown team. And now for our very quick updated nuclear weapon numbers. So starting with China, of course, their ally launched all of their 2 nukes that remain, so they now have 0. And China launched 8 nukes, leaving them with around 50 and 10. Now, of course, Russia's strikes in the Northern Territory destroyed a large supply of their nukes, and that now leaves China at 33 and 10, meaning they only have 23 nukes on their own territory. Now, for Russia and their ally, of course, their nuclear supply was destroyed, they now have 0, and Russia launched 8 bombs into China, leaving them with 50. However, once again, their nuclear supplies were destroyed by China, which leaves them with a staggering 27 and 24, even less than the old empire, who has 7, Russia now has 3, and China has 23, a big difference. Now, there is going to be a slightly different approach for the rest of the war. Countries are going to be fairly reluctant to launch their nuclear bombs. Now, why is that? Well, quite simply, they don't have enough left to really ration. You don't want to use all of your nuclear bombs because then you have 0 and you're very vulnerable. So this is kind of like deterrence in a way, where like we're saving these for like a last ditch effort. Like if we get folded in this war, we're launching them all at you. That's kind of like the thinking here. So all 3 of these countries are actually going to stop the nuclear war and start the conventional war. And welcome to the video. Our fighting begins where it all started, on the border between the old empire and Russia. Now, Russia does have the advantage here. This is because when they saw that the radar detected nukes coming their way, they also mobilized their military for conventional warfare, which was, of course, ahead of the old empire, who didn't respond until they had already been nuked. So Russia's ground troops will quickly move into old Iberian territory, targeting major cities in the Ukrainian region and taking 2 pretty much right away. The old empire's defenses are, of course, destroyed. There are a lot of nuclear green dots everywhere. So Russia has the advantage right away, even going into some nuclear territory to take over what may be left, even though there definitely isn't anything left. But of course, fighting a conventional war while also getting out of a nuclear war, it's going to be kind of difficult to invade because of all the radiation. So Russia is using special suits that block a majority of the radiation. Not all of it though. So this is dangerous. Of course, after the nuclear war started, they didn't start their conventional warfare right away. Of course, they waited for the blast to settle down. It might have been a few weeks after the nukes settled, but nonetheless, the radiation is still going to be there. So it's very difficult for this conventional warfare, but it does still happen, and Russia's advances into the old empire continue. They invade towards the pivotal corridor here, which allows the old empire to connect up with the rest of its territory in Ukraine, and they managed to cut that off, severing any supply lines that the old empire might have been running, and leading to a large offensive into the Ukrainian territory. Elsewhere, Russia starts an offensive into the white team country. Now, these guys were very crippled by the nukes. They couldn't really withstand it, but they do still have 7 nukes that they can fire at any point. Once again, though, that's like last minute, like, oh god, they're coming, we're gonna die, so let's just blow them up kind of situation. So they don't have to worry about using them just yet, although the Russians are moving through their territory very efficiently. Up in Norway, we see the Norwegian military finally ready for their advances, as they very quickly move into Russian territory and kick them all the way out of Sweden. And now comes in a new aspect to the war, the navies fight. Now, it is without a doubt that the navies of both Norway and Russia are extremely strong. Norway is kind of like your Scandinavian empire over here. They have control over the entrance to the Baltic Sea, and of course a lot of coastal areas in the Baltic Sea going all the way up into the North Sea, so a very strong navy is pivotal for Norway's existence. As for Russia though, they don't really have too much of an ocean line anywhere other than in the Black Sea, which they just kind of expanded on, and over here in the Baltic Sea, so most of Russia's navy, if not all of it, is of course in the Baltic Sea, which will lead to a lot of naval fighting between these two in this small body of water. Although immediately though, Norway does gain the advantage, taking these islands from Russia and pushing them back in naval territory. Now, there is something to notice here, is that Norway has complete control over this entire Gulf up here, and that is because Finland is allowing Norway to use their ports for naval access. Now, Finland, of course, is a neutral country. They are not involved in this war, but they are kind of working with Norway here, so that's something to watch in the future if Russia ever decides that that is too far. Although now, though, we do stay in this region as Norway starts an invasion into the Russian puppet states. Now, these are spoils from World War II, from the Brown team. I don't know how they would feel about this, probably not too well, but the Norwegians see a lot of success in mostly undefended territory in the North German state. They end up taking all of its northern coast and start pushing towards its capital. Okay, so the war has started. It's been ongoing for a little bit now, and it looks like Russia has the advantage. Now, there is still no fighting between China and anyone else, but they are getting very ready and very close to doing so. The main front line, of course, is between the old empire and Russia, but there's also been a lot of fighting in the Baltic Sea. But what about the war over in the Americas? These three countries are, of course, all at war with each other. Well, this war is going to be a little bit different than in any war that's been fought over here before, and there's been multiple. Mexico and America, of course, are at war with each other. However, they do realize that there is a strategic point of interest in the middle. Texas. So like, if we just invaded Texas and got them out of the way and then fought each other, that would be a lot easier for both of us, right? Yeah, sure. So Americans start invading into Texas and see a lot of success at first, as Texas is fairly unprepared for this war, mostly because they might have been preparing for an operation into the terrorist territory over here. That of course didn't come to fruition because they're being invaded now. Both America and Mexico see a lot of success in their early endeavors in Texas, as both countries are able to invade and capture major cities. Now as for the naval battles between these three, it's really not looking too good in Texas's favor. Now, their navy has been pretty crushed up already by America and Mexico in the Gulf of Mexico, and Texas just looked entirely unprepared for this war. Now we jump ships over to Iberia. Here we see a similar struggle take place as the navy of the West African country and the navy of the Iberian country fight up against each other. Now both of these countries, behind closed doors, went into a secret agreement not to fire nukes at each other. This is voiding both of their alliances in some way, but both of these countries in some way also kind of are the lone kind of guy in their alliance. Like the West African country is in the Cross Alliance and the Iberian country is of course in the Square Alliance, but they're kind of distant in a way. Now they're going to uphold all their privileges and uphold all the requirements of the alliance, but they don't really seem as close with their host countries as they probably should be. So this is why this behind the door thing happens. Now they're not friendly with each other, they're hostile with each other, but they do acknowledge that nuclear bombs are probably not the best course of action, and they're only hosting nuclear bombs because their host country require them to do so. Also, kind of like a scare tactic between the two of them. That's how nukes really work, realistically. Well, the Iberian country does get the upper hand at first, pushing the West African country completely out of Europe, and then they await a response because they have little to no interest going into Africa and fighting that front just yet, not without the help of some other allies first. Now let's talk about the navies of both Russia and the Old Empire in this theater. Good God. The Old Empire has complete naval domination over all of the waters around their territory, obviously. They have the strongest navy in the world, strongest air force in the world, and strongest army in the world. But this is kind of ridiculous. This is a lot of navy and a lot of control. However, their navy is large, but it's also very spread out between all of the different fronts, which means that they might end up sacrificing some naval supremacy over these regions in order to fight in areas like the Black Sea, or eventually maybe over here in the waters of China. But Russia's naval dominance in the Black Sea is limited at that. They just have this own little pocket right here. And to be honest with you, the Old Empire is going to completely run that pocket over very soon. So yeah, don't even worry about that, Russia. We got that covered. But back to fighting, we see the Russians completely sweep the Old Empire out of Ukraine, invading into the Crimean Peninsula, where a last stand battle is held in this major city. But unfortunately, it doesn't last very long, and the Old Empire is forced to retreat its forces back down to the continent. Now, despite this major victory for Russia, they do not hold any naval supremacy over the Black Sea, and that's for a very simple reason. They cannot get any ships down here. If you try to drop any in the sea, they're going to get blown up, and if you try to bring any over, which you can't right now, but if you try to bring any over, you're not going to get past this. So yeah, it's utter complete domination and control by the Old Empire in the naval front, and the Square team has that large advantage. But now for the fighting between Russia and China. China will act first, sending their forces quickly into Russia and taking over this territory, which not too long ago was subject of war. They actually kind of met with open arms here. The people that invaded these areas, like, you know, Russia, they did so very cruelly, and it ended up not really leading to a lot of assimilation, which very simply just means that Russia didn't control these areas very well, and now they are welcoming China with open arms, with little to no resistance by the local population. We now see China's ally make a move as they also start to invade into Russian territory, but the response that they meet is a little bit more harsh, and they're unable to push past this front line. Now here comes a bunch of fun stuff. If you know your history, you know that these two are about to absolutely obliterate each other. Except they're really not, because it's impossible to really invade anywhere over here. A lot of mountains going on. So any invasion that does happen is very small, and there isn't too much going on between these two on this front line. However, where we do see a lot of movement is on the border between the Green Team and the Old Empire. There is old hatred here. The Green Team despises the Old Empire and everything it stands for, and they will very happily send their very nationalistic military, which consists of a very large percent of their total population. Yeah, you heard that right. Their whole population is involved in this war. This is a total war for the Green Team. They will quickly move into Old Empyrean territory and do some absolutely atrocious stuff. But it does prove to be fairly efficient as they capture multiple major cities on this front line, and it kind of looks like the old empire is a little bit of a fraud at this point because they're losing pretty big. You thought the old empire finally sends its counteroffensive forces, and they absolutely decimate the Russians in the Caucasian front. However, advances into the Crimean and Ukrainian areas are proven to be very difficult. So why do that when you can just focus over here? The old empire will start to make advances into Russian territory, taking any military bases that remain and also heading straight towards any major cities, which they quickly capture. We then see a disagreement among the leaders of the old empire. One military leader wants to continue up north into Russia and go straight for their capital, while the other sees an effective move going for Central Asia and taking them out of the war and knocking out a large part of Russia's oil reserves. Both are pretty good ideas, so let's do them both at the same time. So the old empire will painstakingly push north, capturing very slowly many Russian major cities. And the ultimate goal here is, of course, to reach the capital of Russia in hopes of ending the war, but the Russian military proves to be very hard to fight against. We are in like the dead of summer at this point now though, so there's no winter to worry about just yet, but it's coming. Now, as for the old empire's other plans, they will move into Russia's allies and start taking territory. And this goes extremely well as they're able to take the capital city of the lime green team. Now, this country is extremely weak. I'm not going to lie to you, one of the weakest in the world, so that's why they lost pretty quickly. But you'll also notice that the capital of the pink team is right there, and the invasion here goes much the same as they're able to take that capital city. Now, you'll notice that the colors are a little bit different here. I figured that it was about time to probably differentiate a little. What did I just say? To try to differentiate a little bit differently the colors so you understand where the borders of the countries are, because that was a little bit confusing, but this is a lot better. So this right here, this is Russia's color, and this is all the old empire, of course, but you can just kind of see where the front line is a little bit better in perspective of the border. Anyway, with the old empire's massive counteroffensive over here in the Caucasian region, Russia will kind of re-strategize a little bit better. Now, they, of course, before they were sending all of their military straight down here to fight the old empire, well, also over here as well, but mostly focusing on the old empire, not worrying too much about Norway and the white team. However, after a series of disagreements amongst Russian generals, it is then determined that instead of holding an offensive over here, we should hold a counteroffensive and instead attack the weaker part of the Square Alliance, which just so happens to be the white team. That mission is a go, and it's not pretty. Also, I'm going to disable the nukes just so we can kind of see a little bit better. Sorry about that. Russian troops will storm through the white team, and this really exposes how weak they were. I mean, not like weak like this, but if you were to split the countries of the world in half in terms of like strong and weak, they would definitely be on the weaker side. And Russia, of course, is the third strongest country in the world. China's number 2, old empire number 1. And yeah, goodbye to your capital. With Russia's staggering moves over here in the white team, we see the old empire kind of reorganize their military a little bit for more emphasis on offensive and counteroffensive capabilities in the Balkan region. Russia continues to move their way until they eventually meet the border of the old empire, and this splits the old white country into two. And after capturing the major city over here near the border of the purple team, we see the complete capitulation of the white team. With the white team completely out of the war, it is now time for Russia's second offensive to begin, this time focusing in on the Balkan areas of the old empire, and right away, the old empire is in serious danger as they threaten to cut Greece off from land connection. Now, of course, naval connection still exists and is probably even prioritized over land connection, but due to the fact that this would still kind of hurt, the old empire wants to stop it. Even more so, if Russia were to strategize correctly, and this is now their new plan, they could effectively take over all of Greece, cut the old empire off from Italy, and start launching their naval boats into the Mediterranean Sea, offering a rival to the old empire's navy. This is the plan. Up north, Russia's navy is actually doing quite well compared to the Norwegians. The Russian navy is more advanced, but the Norwegian navy is a lot more numerous, and then the Russians are able to push back the Norwegians basically to their own territorial waters. A very pivotal battle is then fought on this island right here, a very strong Norwegian military base. This island is basically a fortress, and it ends in a Russian victory, which is a huge blow to the Norwegians. However, for the Norwegians' offensive into the northern Russian state, it's going a lot better as they're able to capture the capital of this area. And soon we see the Norwegians basically going over to the brown team and be like, hey, if you want to join this war, you could like totally get your old land back. And the brown team is going to take this and they're going to consider it. However, they will come out and declare neutrality in the end, stating that they are not interested in a world war, one that could even turn their territory nuclear. Okay, so far, this has been as bloody as predicted. Russia does seem to be winning so far, but if we know anything from my videos, if you're winning at first, that doesn't mean anything. In fact, if you're winning at first, you probably end up losing the war, but this war is completely different from any war that I've ever covered before because there are 3 main contributors, which means that there could be one loser, there could be two losers, they could all lose, there could be only one winner. I mean, like, the possibilities between these three are endless. They're not endless, never mind, but they're a lot more numerous compared to a one-on-one, which is like there's two possible, maybe four possible scenarios in total. With this, there are, of course, a lot more. I think like 27 possibilities, maybe. Not good at math, but 3 to the power of 3. Anyway, let's go ahead and continue on with this war. Back over to the Americas. We see the Texas Navy get completely folded by both Mexico and America, and fighting between these two navies ensue in the Gulf of Mexico. America does appear to have the upper hand at first, but like I said, the war is just starting, so that doesn't mean really anything. But the Americans will continue their offensive in the Texan territory, mostly focusing in on this southeastern area, as this is where most of Texas's population lies, as well as, of course, their capital city, which is, of course, of utmost importance when you're fighting a war. The same is said for Mexico. They are heavily targeting the capital city, and after taking another major city, it's not looking too good for Texas, even at this early stage in the war. Also, I do want to say real quick, I don't have a definitive end. Well, I know how the war ends. I know who loses the war, if anyone loses the war. Does someone lose the war? Maybe not, maybe so. But I don't have like a timeline for the end of the war, which means that, like I said, this is going to be like one of my longest wars ever covered across multiple episodes. So if you have any suggestions for the second part of this war, if you want to see any events happen, maybe any countries get involved, as long as it doesn't change my outcome too much, I will look at those suggestions. So leave any suggestions that you have for the next part of this video in the comments below for episode 48. Also, I was advised to announce that there is a mapping competition occurring in the Discord server. I think there's actual like prizes that are going to be given out. So if you're good at mapping and you're interested in competing, make sure to join the Discord server in the link in the description. Anyway, back to the fighting. Now back over to the Chinese front line, we see Russia finally pull off a counteroffensive against the Chinese. Specifically against the Chinese though, they're a little bit more worried about the strategical position of this land compared to this land, even though this land does threaten more cities. They're holding up the gold team pretty well though, so they don't have to worry about an advance just yet. They do have to worry about the Chinese though, and their counteroffensive goes well and then it stops because all of China's forces are focused right here. It's a long shot to the old empire, and while they are still at war with each other, they likely won't see any fighting until this area gets cleaned up a little bit better. Now back to this front line where it's really important. The old empire will continue to push back into their own territory, just very slowly. It's very difficult to do this. It's also very costly as the Russians have set up applicable fortifications. However, though, they do manage to maneuver into this major city, which is seen as an astounding victory for the old empire in the early stages of the war, and their hopes of a counteroffensive are pretty high. Over here, however, it's still not looking too pretty for them, as the Russians are continuing to sweep into their territory, now focusing in on the Balkan area. Likewise, over here in this area, we see them continue to not be able to stop the green team's advances because, first of all, that's a lot of troops. Second of all, the old empire has their military very spread out right now. However, you will notice something, and I won't say anything about it, but you will notice something that happens right here pretty quickly. The brown team, despite being invaded from the east, they will also start to send troops into this territory, and I know that there are mountains here. I know that it would be very hard to invade. I know. I know. It's just that without like kind of slightly ignoring geography, this war would be very stalemated. First of all, the Caucasus Mountains, they would serve as a border between Russia and the old empire, preventing any real kind of offensive into the old empire or Russia. Over here, once you get all of Greece, which good luck, where are you going to go from there? Because like the corridor right here, and then you'd have to island hop into Italy. The only kind of real front line that is sort of invadable is like this territory right here, but there's nothing really worth anything over here. So like I said, we do have to kind of very slightly ignore geography in that sense. But now back over to the front line between Russia and Norway, it's starting to shift against Norway a lot. Russia is sending a big military group to retake all of their German state, and that is exactly what they do, minus a little bit of land over here, which Norway is holding down. Navy-wise though, the Norwegians are getting some reinforcements from their allies, which is allowing them to push back the Russians in the Baltic Sea. That advance looks something like this, heavy in the north, and there is little movement in the south. But the main goal of the Norwegians at this point is to retake their big fortress, which the Russians have now converted to themselves, and it's really hurting the Norwegian Navy a lot. Now I do want to say I was originally going to do air superiority, but I really can't. I mean, I can, but it looks really bad. I was going to do colors for each alliance, so the square alliance would be purple because of the purple team. But when you do another layer over all of this already, you can kind of see how it's really hard to see exactly what you're looking at. The front lines are confusing. Even over Norway, if I were to do that, yeah, it just doesn't look very good. So for normal videos, we can start to incorporate things like air superiority, but as for this series, that's not very possible at this very point. What is possible, though, is continued land invasion. The Russians will continue their advances into Greece and are now threatening to cut off the Greek peninsula from the old empire. And enough is enough, said the old empire. Counteroffensive in your face, and the Russians are pushed back pretty greatly. Not too much though, they still are hanging around. Likewise, screw you, said Russia, as they also pull off a counteroffensive, retaking a major city over here. Kind of close to where Stalingrad was, sort of? Oh, okay. The old empire, having complete control over the Caspian Sea, was very easily able to make an amphibious landing in the green team and attack their forces from behind. Maybe that's why we didn't see too much resistance from the old empire. But yeah, there's some really ugly stuff that takes place after this invasion, and a large portion of the green team's armies are cut off, and they are all slaughtered. Goodbye. Okay, there's the counteroffensive. Yep, all right. So the green team had a very strong start, but the old empire finally locked in, and with their cheeky little maneuver around the green team's forces, it's not looking good for them all of a sudden. Ooh, yeah, ooh, that's tough. We see a complete amphibious invasion of the coastal areas of this lighter green country, and that's going to hurt them a lot. Not to the point of capitulation, though, because they will be occupied by their allies instead. So I'm going to retain their color, even though they are no longer really a country and are instead just being occupied by their allies. So the old empire is having a lot of success in the Caspian front, the Caspian theater, as I would like to call it now. This includes the Caspian Sea, obviously, probably into Central Asia, but I'm thinking this is a different theater. And then we have the Ukrainian theater / the Balkan theater. I would call that theater something like this. Then you have the Mediterranean theater. I'm not gonna go through it all. The Norwegian theater, the German theater, blah blah blah. You get it. What's this theater called then? It's called the Bye Bye Brown Team theater, as the red team is able to push through all of their fortifications and mountains, because screw mountains, and take the capital city of the brown team. Ouchie, said the brown team. They're then going to pull their forces out of the old empire for self-defense. The green team will get mad at them for that, but oh well. In fact, we're going to take over the territory that you just ditched before the old empire can get here. All right, cool. So the green team now has even more advances into the old empire, and the Russians are now pushing back against the gold team. Goodbye, get out of our territory, said the Russians. Hello, said the Russians, and they take a little bit of territory from the gold team before just straight up taking their capital city, and that's going to hurt them a lot, as per usual. China's a little bit mad about this, so they will continue their offensive again after being pushed back a little bit. They'll take another Russian major city, and now they have to make a decision. Do we go up north and capture these major cities? Probably not. That's not too smart. Do we head to the center area and take these major cities? Maybe. That could prove to be strategically important because it would cut off these cities as well. Or do we just say screw it and go after all these southern major cities, damaging Russia's population numbers and economy? Where are their nukes at? Oh, did it on the wrong layer. Okay, sorry. So there are a few more nuclear sites that are not being shown because I simply forgot to show them on the right layer, but here you go. Actually, I should be able to fix that real quick. That's not right. All right, never mind. I can't fix it. Doesn't matter though. The sites of the nuclear bombs aren't important until after the war. But China's strategy is to go after these southern cities because they are a little bit more important than anything else. Even though taking these cities could prove to be better in the long run, China will send all of its forces now heading west. And with this, they enter into their allies' territory and start helping them fight back against the Russians, recapturing their capital city and doing damage to any Russian defenders in the area. Over here in the Caucasian region, the Russians will continue their counteroffensive, take back another major city, picking back actually all of their major cities. Now the old empire has 0, but kind of predictably they are going to lose a little bit more of their land over here on this front line. In fact, the old empire takes back all of their own territory and starts an invasion into their former ally, which at this point has been converted into a Russian puppet government, kind of similar to what Germany did to all of the invaded territories during World War II. So this is no longer like a liberation camp. Well, I mean, it is, but it's not going to like recolor the color of the white team because that country is gone. The government is dead. It doesn't exist anymore. Oh hell. The West Africans are coming. They are entering into Iberia. Okay, this isn't good. Oh god. The Dark Cyan team They want some revenge, it appears. They join the Cross Alliance, declare war on the Square Alliance, and that's not really the best thing that you want to happen. It completely catches the Iberian country by surprise, which leads to them losing 2 major cities in the early weeks of the war. This also allows time for the West African country to have a little bit of time to prepare, as their forces now move into full force Iberian territory. Their navy gets pushed back, and the Old Empire is a little bit worried that they might be losing an ally. Back over in Central Asia, the Red Team does a spearhead, captures the last major city of the Brown Team, which effectively leads to their capitulation. Just it's going to look a little bit weird because they're not going to fully capitulate. Their allies will once again occupy their territory in their place, but it looks something like this now, and this is Green Team and Russian forces holding out. But with them out of the way, the Red Team can start an advance into Russia, capturing a major city on the southern border, and allowing for China and the Gold Team to almost completely push the Russians out of the country over here in the west. Okay, so now looking at a little quick analysis of the war, at least conventionally, we can see that the Cross Team is very clearly losing. We can see that the Cross Team is at probably the biggest disadvantage, as they have lost only 1 ally so far, but I mean technically 2 with these guys gone. And then the Brown Team as well. The Square Team has lost 1 ally, the White Team, or the Farmers Union, if we want to call it that. And the Iberian Team seems to be in a little bit of trouble over here as well, something to monitor. Also over here, we see the Cross Team losing, as Texas is not in the greatest of spots. If I had to choose a winning team so far, I'd definitely give it over to the Chinese team. They have lost only a small amount of land, even then though you can replace that land with the gains that they have gotten in the Brown Team, and it's very clear that the Circle Team is on the offensive in this war. As for the rest of the world, most of them are just watching, but there are a few watchers in silence that are waiting for maybe a good opportunity to jump in at any moment. And I do want to just take a moment real quick. This series has come a very long way. We started in Oman. This was a comment in one of the videos, but I'm going to reiterate it. Shout out to whoever wrote that comment. I'm sorry that I didn't look up your name, but this all started with a bunch of red dudes in Oman and has turned into 3-time World War, 1-time nuclear war, multiple instances of smaller conflict and regional wars, some genocides, and just a whole lot of bad stuff. So shout out to the series, 47 episodes old, over a year old, still going strong. I do want to reiterate while I'm saying this right now, there has been talks of me ending the series in like comment sections. There's been some misinformation going around. I don't plan on ending the series anytime soon. Now, I do have the ending of this series worked out. I can implement that whenever I want. So if I feel like the series is A, dying, or B, it's just time to end it, I can end it whenever I want. I know how I want to end it. There's a scenario that I have in my head, and it doesn't require too many countries to do. Also, I do have season 2 of this series. If we ever want to do a season 2, I have that also ready to go. Now, I don't have it recorded or anything like that, but I'm saying like I have what I want to happen like in my head, in the back of my head, in a file drawer. So if we ever decide that we want a season 2 of Wixo after it ends, whenever it ends, then we can maybe do that. I do want to put a crazy idea out there though. Is it possible for us to reach 100 episodes? Do we end it on episode 100? That would be insane, but I'm totally down for that. It just kind of relies on you guys, because I can draw this out. Well, I don't want to say draw it out, but I can prolong this series for as long as I want, because there's no realistic boundaries that are set in place. This is a completely fictional world, so you can do kind of whatever you want to do. But it could get old, which means that I would probably end the series once it starts losing too much support. No plans of that, by the way. I have no plans of doing that. But, you know, episode 100 is theoretical, but definitely possible. We're already on 47, going to 48 now. And there's only been 3 world wars. We need to have a World War 7, guys. Like, seriously? Anyway, let's do a little bit more fighting before I decide to end this video. In Europe, the old empire's advances into their old ally are stalled. In fact, Russia is now once again pushing back in this region. However, due to the heavy amount of naval dominance that the old empire has, their advances are pretty much cut short as they are bombarded by a ton of cruisers and battleships off the coast. And to keep the back and forth nature going forward, we also see the old empire start to lose claims again to Russia in this area as they take back this major city and start to push into old Iberian territory, all the while once again losing territory to the old empire over here as they take 2 major cities. Very back and forth, I'm sorry. Over in Central Asia, the Green Team does do a slight counteroffensive, and this counteroffensive goes well enough to where they can get re-access to the sea, but the old empire decides to ruin their day just a little bit by taking another major city in the south of this light green country, which also allows them to advance their front line over here in the west. Elsewhere though, the Green Team is fully pushing through this kind of Central Asian slash No, this is like Turkmenistan, maybe Uzbekistan. But they're pushing right towards this major city and they're able to capture it. And this is a huge blow to the old empire because this is a very strategically important city. It had already been nuked, which destroys its strategic purposes, but military-wise, they had come into the city after it was destroyed and set up a very big outpost there. That outpost is now gone, and with the slight collapse of old Iberian strategical and logistical optics over here, the Orange team decides to make its move, invading into old Iberian territory, as well as their puppet state. We even see the Red team make slight advances into the old empire, not before taking some more brown territory though, and it doesn't look too good for the old empire on this front. In the Americas, Mexico's front line is expanded upon, as they are pretty much just doing like one big sweeping front line, kind of similar to the Eastern Front in World War II. They get a little bit more strategical when it comes to the coastal areas of Texas, as they start to push up in a likely spearhead towards their capital city. Likewise, America will do the same thing, kind of sweeping down the coastal areas before kind of formulating what is probable to be a spearhead towards their Texan capital city. Back over in Europe, we see Russia's puppet state completely kick the Norwegians out with the help of Russia, of course. And from here, Russia enters into Norwegian territory from their puppet territory. Now, these guys aren't going to do any invading on their own because they don't have their own military. It's simply just the Russian military here. But Russia will push up the Danish peninsula, and it's not too good for Norway because they are at a huge disadvantage when it comes to conventional warfare with Russia. Now, of course, they were able to take this area in the beginning stages of the war. That's because Russia kind of abandoned it in a way, but that foothold is there should Russia ever choose to invade Norway. And we saw that Norway's conventional warfare was at a loss when Russia took their military fortress here, and now they're at a complete loss. But they are able to hold on to the coastal areas and this major city for now. But Russia is slowly making its way up the peninsula. And with the Russian conventional victories in this region, we also see Russian naval victories along the coastal areas of its puppet state going all the way up to the Danish islands, where huge naval battles are occurring near Copenhagen. If Russia can get out of the Baltic Sea, and probably even kick the Norwegian Navy out of this area, they can finally start to import food, because at this point, Russia hasn't been able to do that. Now, Russia can make its own food, right? But a lot of countries, even realistically, import food from other countries. They need to also import supplies, probably from the West African country, because as of now, these two countries are fighting on isolation. They aren't really in contact with each other in terms of supplies and resources. There's no sharing happening, but if they were able to connect with each other, it would be a huge part in the war. Now, the old empire does have access to their ally in Iberia, although they need to probably send some ships over because this is becoming an issue, but they are kind of blocked from getting any resources up to Norway because of the West African Navy. So in the next episode, it's likely that we see a ton of naval battles, a ton of pivotal naval battles take place, and we'll also probably see the end of the war. This might actually be a 3-episode war now that I'm thinking about it. It might end on episode 49, meaning that a new era starts in episode 50. That would work out pretty well. We'll see though. I'm not too sure about the episode count, but I do know that I've been recording for 1 hour and 18 minutes, which is way longer than usual. Usually it's like 30 to 40 minutes. This is double that and some. So yeah, I'm gonna end the video here. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you're excited for part 2 and maybe even part 3, let me know in the comments. Give me any of your predictions. Let me know who you think is going to win the war. Who do you think is winning the war as of now? Who do you think will come out on top in the end? Do you think there will be multiple winners or multiple losers? What countries do you think will get involved? And with that, give me any of your recommendations for the war and the series. Who do you want to see get involved? Let me know in the comments below. But as for now, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next episode. And of course, thank you to all our super fans. This includes America and Canada and UK, Freezioid, Godzilla Bro, Zaylance, Unknown TD, Georgie Badev, Servernator, Johnny XX7, King Cheese, GD Cilia, Pablo Sigma Cat, Death Strider X, Hammer Toad 45, Connor the Gamer, Nevada Garbage Trucks, and DW Cool Dude. Once again, thank you guys.